As global deaths from coronavirus pass 500,000, a leading scientist advising Number 10 says the UK is on a knife edge in the pandemic and he expects a rise in cases in the coming weeks. Professor Sir Jeremy Farrar, who's a member of the government's SAGE Advisory Committee, also told the BBC he expects a second wave of infections in the winter. The number of people recorded to have died with coronavirus in the UK rose by 36 in the last 24 hours, and that takes the total number of deaths to 43,550. It comes as the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, says the government is considering imposing a localised lockdown in Leicester after a surge of coronavirus cases in the city. Our health correspondent, Catherine Burns, has the very latest.
Great to have you back, for now at least. It almost looks like normal, but about a quarter of all of the coronavirus cases Leicester has seen have happened in the first 2 weeks of this month. So just as this city is opening up, there are reports about it locking back down again in some way. People are heading home after a busy weekend in the shops, but there are real questions to be asked about what Leicester is going to look like next weekend. So we know that the City Council is working with public health officials, going through data on the new cases, asking, are they some kind of cluster? And if so, is it time to bring in new restrictions? The local authority and health officials are meeting tomorrow morning, and the top priority will be to map out exactly where the new cases are happening in the city.
We need the data. We and you need to know what is happening on the ground in Leicester, and it's not helpful really just to talk about outbreaks or to suggest that there needs to be a citywide lockdown. We need to know what the real situation is on the ground here in our city.
At the end of the day, if we're saying they're going to do a lockdown for Leicester, I mean, what's it going to mean? Like, what about people that commute and stuff? What about people that work outside of Leicester but live in Leicester? What's going to happen to people like that?
It is my dad's birthday next weekend and we'd fully planned to see him. You know, I've obviously not seen him for months and months, and the fact that just for one city is just our luck, isn't it?
I would be gutted, to be completely honest with you. You know, people are looking forward to starting to, you know, getting their lives back to normal.
We need to go out, but if we have to, we'll have to, won't we?
And all this as across the UK, pubs and bars will open up over the next few weeks. The main advice for people is to stick to social distancing, stay at home where possible, and to wash their hands regularly. Officials in Leicester say the new cases could be partly explained by more testing and that there's been no increase in hospital admissions or deaths. But as lockdown eases, we still have no vaccine or cure for coronavirus, and so a warning not to be complacent.
We're on a knife edge. It's very precarious, the situation in particularly England at the moment, and I would anticipate we would see an increase in new cases over the coming weeks. The next 3 months are absolutely critical. The numbers are lower, but the virus hasn't changed, and come the winter, come the reopening of schools, which is absolutely critical, we can anticipate to see rebounds and second waves.
Lockdown is a blunt tool, easy to start but infinitely harder to come out of. We can possibly expect more local outbreaks and so more difficult decisions in places across the country in the months ahead. Catherine Burns, BBC News.
Well, our health editor Hugh Pym is with me. How worried is the government over places like Leicester?
Well, Clive, there is concern at high levels of the Department of Health and Public Health England about what they're seeing in Leicester. Just in the last few days, more cases than they'd expect, and more than what was reported 10 days or so ago when there was a large number of cases in the Leicester area. Now, it's not entirely clear whether this is just localised or not. It seems it probably is. It could possibly be linked to the food processing industry. We've seen links between virus outbreaks and factories in other areas of the country. Certainly local politicians and officials want to know what this data is, and they've got this meeting tomorrow with public health experts to discuss it. So we're talking, I think, about localised outbreaks here. So what sort of measures are going to be considered? Well, no decisions yet, I'm told. Unlikely to be some widespread lockdown. It could well be very localised, targeted initiatives like closing shops in certain areas, possibly schools, cafes. It could be a public information campaign just focused on Leicester's particular issues. Now, the point being made is this data was picked up by the test and trace system, which has been rolled out nationally across England. That's what it's there for, to spot these localised outbreaks so action can be taken. But certainly there's a challenge here. And Sir Jeremy Farrar of Wellcome Trust, we heard just a minute or so ago saying we're living on a knife edge here. This virus is very much still circulating.
OK, many thanks, Hugh. Hugh Pym, our health editor.